Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's wellness event, addressing the men's mental health crisis. What is men's work? We'd like to thank you for sharing your lunch hour with us. I'm Becky Pacone, and I'm from Alumni Relations and Constituent Engagement Career Programs, and I, along with my colleague, Michelle Cavalcanti, will be moderating this event today. You can find closed captioning available in your navigation bar below, and we welcome Jim and Richard, who will be our interpreters for today's event. There are a few things we want to mention before we start. During the presentation, we do ask that you keep your microphones on mute so that everyone can clearly hear the speaker. There is a question and answer period following the presentation, and we ask that you send any questions directly to Michelle Cavalcanti in a private chat, and we'll try to get to as many questions as we can during our time. The program is being recorded, and I'll be receiving a link to the video as well as other links that we share today in a follow-up email within about a week. Today's program is co-hosted by the Mental Health and Wellness Group on the Meliora Collective. The Collective is an exclusive online platform similar to LinkedIn, all about connecting to your university community, career exploration, mentorship, networking. If you are not a member of the Meliora Collective and you're a student, grad student, alum, parent, staff, or faculty member, please do join. You can join using a link we'll be providing in the chat. And right now, the Collective has over 12,600 members, and that number keeps growing. The Mental Health and Wellness Group is one of over 50 groups on the Collective, and it provides information and resources on mental health and wellness strategies and shares practices that seek to support our university community. And many of our alumni who are working in this space are also members, from mindfulness practitioners to nutritionists to coaches and mental health and wellness experts. We also have resources listed on the group's resource page, including the university's services for students. You'll see a link to join this group, as well as other links, again, in the chat throughout this program. Alumni Relations and Constituent Engagement has also created a useful webpage where you can find more health and wellness resources being offered by Alumni Relations across campus. So now I would like to introduce Johnny Cole from the College of Arts and Sciences, class of 2019, the Take 5 class of 2020. Hi, Johnny.
Hello.
Johnny's a marketing technology consultant by day and a men's work facilitator by night. He began his men's work journey while attending the University of Rochester, where he studied economics and international relations and presided over an organization called Men Opposing Violence Everywhere, or MOVE, that focused on sexual assault prevention education. He was awarded a Take 5 scholarship in gender studies coursework and used the opportunity to concurrently intern and then work full-time at the Willow Domestic Violence Center in Rochester, New York, through the early months of the COVID-19 outbreak. After graduating and moving to the private sector, Johnny realized his responsibility in reaching other men to unlearn patriarchy and thus improve social conditions for all, and then pivoted to a formal men's work practice, leading his first men's retreat for Hey Brother Co.'s inaugural cohort in July of 2022. Through founding Hey Brother Co., he hopes to create a movement of kind, self-motivated, and emotionally skilled men and boys who uplift one another to serve their communities. Thank you so much, Johnny, for being with us today. And with that, I will pass it over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. That was a great introduction. Before I expand upon my background and the content of my webinar, has everyone seen my screen okay? Perfect. So I'd like to express my utmost gratitude for Melissa, Michelle, and Becky from the Office of Alumni Relations for reaching out to me and creating this opportunity. Your support and enthusiasm is greatly appreciated. Melissa, you've been in my corner since I was a student at the U of R, and that means the world to me. I'd also like to thank the Meliora Collective Mental Health and Wellness Group for their official co-sponsorship of the event. And the last sentiment of gratitude I'll express is for everybody that is on this call today and everybody watching the recording after the fact. Your presence is a testament to the importance of this issue, and it's deeply personal to me, so I appreciate it. So let's begin. I'm going to invite everybody to take a breath. Wherever you are, whether you're in your office, at home, sitting, standing, now is the perfect time to briefly close your eyes and take a deep breath in through your nose, letting your chest and your belly fill up with fresh air. Take another sharp inhale at the top of the breath, and then sigh it out through the mouth. Great. Let's do one more. Deep inhale through the nose, sharp inhale through the nose at the top of the breath, and then sigh it out through the mouth. Okay. You can open your eyes again so that you can watch the presentation. It's so important to breathe and check in with our bodies and refocus our minds on the present moment. I find that I get so distracted in the constantly connected culture, whether it's my phone, the responsibility, or the general pacing of life. And when I'm distracted, it's hard to identify what's important in the present moment. So thank you so much for focusing on the present moment right now as we talk about the men's mental health crisis. I'll start by asking you a few questions. Where did you learn what it means to be a man? Was it at home, from your father, from your grandfather, or an uncle, perhaps? Where did you learn what it means to be a good man? From school, from a pastor, from a friend's parent, or maybe a good book? Where did you learn what it means to be a healthy man? From a coach, maybe a sports icon or a teammate, your favorite movie star? And where did you learn what it means to be a happy man? These questions are not ones I asked myself up until the last few years, but upon active reflection, another question emerges. From all the places I might have learned about masculinity and what it means to be a good, happy, and healthy man, what are the conclusions I've drawn? There's one very intelligent man who might have an answer for us, and it's not me. No, this man is at an institution almost as prestigious as the University of Rochester, and his name is Bob Waldinger. 7 years ago, Bob gave a TED Talk about the initial findings from the Harvard study of adult development. Bob is the fourth director of this study, which, since the date of the TED Talk, has now been running for over 80 years. It tracked 724 men since the 1930s, some of whom were college sophomores at Harvard when the study began, and the rest were teenagers from Boston's poorest neighborhoods, but all were men. Now, most of this initial cohort of this all-male study thought that things like social status, affluence, and success were what they needed to find a fulfilling life. And that's the topic of Bob's TED Talk. What does it mean to have a good life? And these messages on social status and affluence are exactly what are still being taught to men over 80 years later about how to achieve fulfillment, find happiness, and measure our worth as human beings. Let's see what Bob has to say about the findings of the study.
Survey, many of our men, when they were starting out as young adults, really believed that fame and wealth and high achievement were what they needed to go after to have a good life. But over and over these 75 years, our study has shown that the people who fared the best were the people who leaned into relationships with family, with friends, with community.
Wow. Imagine that. Thanks, Bob. So what I'm here to tell you all today about is that the messaging we've been told about masculinity is fraudulent, and so we're experiencing a mental health crisis. One way to address this crisis is through something called men's work, which is the deliberate redefining of masculinity in community with other men for the betterment of all. This issue is extremely important to me because it's affected me personally in numerous ways. I founded my company, Hey Brother Co., because I was lacking a community of men to support me. And I realized that I wasn't the only man suffering because of this absence. Hey Brother Co. makes the world Hey Brother Co. makes the world a better place by teaching men and boys to embody healthy masculinity, to challenge harmful, antiquated ideals about masculinity, and to mitigate the harm that we're constantly doing to ourselves and others. So aside from his TED Talk, Bob and his co-authored a book that was released in January of this year, which summarizes the findings from the Harvard study of adult development into 3 key ideas. The first is that good relationships keep us happy, healthier, and help us lead longer lives. In fact, just as social connections are provably really good for us, we can see that loneliness literally kills and can be as dangerous as some of the most serious diseases. And it's not just the number of friends you have or whether you're dating or you're married to someone long-term, it's the quality of those relationships. And quality can be measured by the level of authenticity. How expressive can you be? Do you feel seen, appreciated, and understood? And the last point is that good relationships don't just protect our bodies, they protect our brains. You're less likely to suffer from mental illness and then later in life, degenerative brain conditions if you have more meaningful connections in your life. So if we know all this about the necessity of authentic relationships for our wellness and longevity, and that the majority of those enrolled in this study's original cohort were men, then it should be all the more alarming that we are in the midst of a loneliness and mental health epidemic that is most severely impacting men and boys. We're lonelier than ever. The Survey Center on American Life found that since 1995, the number of American men reporting they had no close friends quintupled. That's ×5 for my non-University of Rochester folks. The number of men saying they had at least 6 close friends has reduced in half. And in that same time period, the suicide rates for men have risen exponentially. In the United States, while men make up 49% of the population, we account for nearly 80% of the completed suicides, according to the Center for Disease Control. This correlation is supported by what we know to be true about the health benefits of social relationships and the detriments of isolation. So if you don't trust Bob Waldinger or Harvard, and I don't blame you, here's a few articles I found in the last year which chronicle the men's loneliness and isolation epidemic. Just a few, and maybe a few more. And maybe a few more. And as you can see, this isn't a problem exclusive to younger generations. Older men are suffering as well. The media is taking note of the drastic trends we're seeing among men and boys, but none offer satisfactory causes or propose meaningful solutions. This begs the question, why? The way we think about masculinity and what it means to be a man in the modern world is fundamentally broken. We're taught to numb ourselves and limit our ability to feel and express the full range of our human experience. And this miseducation starts at birth. I'd like to use a personal story to emphasize this. From the moment I was born, I was loved unconditionally by my older sister, Emily, who I believe is watching this webinar right now, so I am. She took good care of me, as any big sister would, and we did everything together. She kept watch while I napped so nobody would mess with me. She shared food with me, and she was even nice enough to lend me her clothes so that we could match, but she wasn't nice enough to tell me how to wear them properly. So as you can see, I've graciously censored out my wardrobe malfunction in the last photo. I credit my mother and my sister for my love of the color pink to this day and for my blissful early years spent expressing myself. Unfortunately, as I got older, starting from about 3 or 4, I was unconsciously coerced into distancing myself from my mother and sister and changing my personality and behaviors. I began to notice the disapproving looks from my father when I would play dress up with my sister. These wordless exchanges spoke volumes and impressed upon me an inexplicable feeling of shame about innocent self-expression and play. These looks turned into comments and eventually direct intervention. At one point, he denied me from attending a neighborhood block party because I was wearing a tutu like the one pictured here, and he was afraid of what people would think of his son. I was probably 4 or 5 at the time. So from my father, I began to learn that to be a man, you must numb yourself. I learned that a good man sacrifices himself and sacrifices access to his own emotions, and in so doing, commands the respect of others, especially other men. I learned that a healthy man is physically strong enough to solve problems through violence and intimidation, and I learned that a happy man is one who gets what he wants. This message was from home was amplified when I started school. Not just from other boys, but from all angles, it seemed I was constantly being bombarded with ideas like, boys don't cry, boys are good at sports, you better not do X like a girl, don't throw like a girl, boys suck it up, man up, fight through the pain, boys will be boys, don't talk about it, don't be sensitive, don't talk about your feelings, that makes you weak. The list goes on. I tried as hard as I could to internalize these messages, which made me deviate from my natural self. It made me feel like there was something wrong with me, that I wasn't like other boys because my natural self was more sensitive. I wanted physical and emotional closeness with other people in the world when the world was telling me boys should be independent and strong and uncaring. This created a deep sense of loneliness within me, stemming from that feeling of not quite measuring up to what a real man should be, which was reinforced on a daily basis. Now, acclaimed psychotherapist and New York Times bestselling author Terrence Real describes this as the normal traumatization of boys. There are elements of my story that are unique and perhaps best elaborated on in a therapist's office or one of my men's groups, but the pattern I experienced is one of the most commonly occurring displays of social conditioning throughout the world, one which we all, boys, girls, men, women, non-binary folk, and everyone in between, are subject to. And that is indoctrination into patriarchy. And before you raise an eyebrow or jump to any conclusions when you hear this word, please take a moment to listen. When I say patriarchy, I'm not implying that we exist in a world where only men make decisions and are in control of everything in a literal sense. For example, 80% of single-parent households in the US are headed by women. We have women in positions of leadership across companies, schools, and organizations throughout the world. In fact, the president of our very own University of Rochester is a woman. There's plenty of progress still needed to achieve gender parity for many social and economic measures, but there are numerous examples of systems and organizational units where women do indeed make decisions. So what I mean by patriarchy is that it is a value system, which we are all taught, whether we acknowledge it or not, that asserts that the masculine is superior to the feminine, that there are specific unchanging qualities to define both masculinity and femininity, and that men are inherently dominating and thus justified in instances of domination over others, whether those are weaker men, women, or children. It's so tightly woven into the fabric of our social structure that it's nearly impossible to disentangle from. And there are often consequences for trying to do so. Acclaimed, brilliant feminist scholar, educator, and author Bell Hooks defines patriarchy as a political social system that insists that males are inherently dominating, superior to everything and everyone deemed weak, especially females, and endowed with the right to dominate and rule over the weak and to maintain dominance through various forms of psychological terrorism and physical violence. The word psychological is very important here because when we're talking about a value system, it identifies the extent to which this system affects our minds, and not just the minds of men. No, describing and identifying patriarchy is not a blame and shame game to say that men are at the root of all problems and we're to blame for everything, and we need to stop whatever it is that we're doing. In fact, psychological patriarchy is very important to distinguish that we can all play our part in perpetuating patriarchal narratives. Hooks describes and furthers her definition by introducing psychological patriarchy as the dynamic between those qualities deemed masculine and feminine, in which half of our human traits are exalted while the other half is devalued. And both men and women participate in this tortured value system. So it is possible that there are women in your life or other children or people who have told you to man up, stop crying, don't act in a certain way, and confined you, if you're a man, into a rigid man box, as Tony Porter from A Call to Men calls it. The man box is what we deem acceptable for us to express ourselves and the emotions that we are allowed to show versus the ones that we don't allow to show. So patriarchy had a huge influence on my life growing up, as it does have for most of us. But to tell you the truth, I didn't learn about any of these concepts, nor did I start reflecting on my own mental health and wellness until I became a student at the University of Rochester. I arrived at the university bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, eager to reinvent myself, as many of us do when we experience the transition from high school and living at home to college and a greater degree of autonomy. I became highly involved with various campus student organizations, filling up all my spare time outside of class and work. And the first student organization that had a major impact on me, setting me on the path to becoming a men's work practitioner, was Men Opposing Violence Everywhere, MOVE. During freshman orientation, a small group of older male students gave a presentation on men's roles in preventing sexual assault on college campuses. I remember it like it was yesterday, seeing Vito Martino, Jake Guzman, David Markakis, and other UR students on stage in Strong Auditorium, boldly proclaiming that violence against women was a men's issue to solve, and elaborating on the concept of consent and how important it was for us college-aged young men to understand. I was moved to join the club and began to learn about some of these concepts that I hadn't been exposed to previously. Through facilitating conversations with my peers about consent, rape culture, and toxic masculinity, I realized more and more that there aren't sufficient spaces for men to discuss what's going on in our hearts and our minds, especially not in a group setting. Some of the harmful expressions of our behavior, whether it's anger, violence, emotional distance from loved ones, or even self-harm, these are direct results of the patriarchal culture we live in and the vision of masculinity that we perpetuate, which is unfeeling, hyper-independent. We equate emotional expression with weakness, self-sacrificing. During my time in MOVE, I had the opportunity to meet Tarana Burke, who's the founder of the Me Too movement. And during an audience Q&A, I asked her, what more could I be doing as a man to help end violence against women? And she gave me an inspiring prompt, which is to call in other men and continue to speak up in spaces where there are no women present. And I took that to heart. The second club that had a deep impact on my journey to men's work, and also in my quest to prove my own masculinity, and a club that made me realize the importance of creating spaces for men to express ourselves and heal, is the University of Rochester Uglies rugby team. Now, why we were called the Uglies, but they still let me on the team, I'll never know. But I joined rugby in part because I wanted to prove myself and to those around me that I was tough, because real men are tough. And what's tougher than playing football without pads and a few rules? It was also because I had nothing to do on a certain afternoon, and my freshman year roommate, Paul Nassif, invited me to come because I had nothing else going on and couldn't turn him down. I admired a lot of the men that I met on the rugby team because they exemplified so many of the masculine characteristics that I previously saw absent in myself. There I am on the edge of our team. I think this is the 2019 season. And the qualities that I saw were fearlessness, a desire to be physical, to have aggression. Some of the things that we would say before a match about our opponents were inherently violent, but it's part of sports culture. And I felt like I needed to participate in order to toughen up and to sharpen myself with a more masculine edge. I met some friends, many friends, and actually mentors on the Uglies rugby team. And I'll tell you, the fear never went away from the butterflies in your stomach before every game, but I had some help along the way to get over that and also explore rugby as a testament, again, to the importance of gender solidarity spaces. This is where I met Zach Cook. Zach was a friend and mentor who was a tough as nails leader on our team. And when I say tough, I mean it. Zach was always the first one to get up after taking a hit. He was a leader and a coach to the other boys on the team. And like me, he was a first-generation college student. He was a veteran, actually, that served a tour in Afghanistan with the United States Navy before enrolling at the University of Rochester. And Zach showed me what it meant, what I thought it meant to be a real man that commanded the respect of others, didn't show fear in the face of physical confrontation, and made space for other men in his life. Here's a picture of Zach and I at his graduation in May of 2018. Unfortunately, this is the last time that I saw Zach because he died by suicide in April of 2019, on April 11th, to be specific. More than 100 men die per day in the United States from suicide. And while some of the figures are varying, the common movement is that 22 veterans per day die from suicide, which I think is way too many. I believe one of the reasons we have a problem with mental health, with isolation, and with self-harm is because of this rigid narrative of masculinity, which tells us that if we are struggling, we better keep it to ourselves. Building healthy communities of men who engage in men's work and learn to redefine masculinity together is essential for our survival as a species and essential for our complete and full human experience. I believe it's the antidote and the recipe to a lot of the problems we're facing globally. So I have to define men's work for you at this point, right? Men's work is any dedicated activity for men focused on growth, healing, self-development, embodying healthy masculinity, and becoming a better man. Some examples of men's work are practicing vulnerability, opening up and sharing, even if it's uncomfortable. Learning the skills of emotional expression. So how do I identify if some sort of external stimulus is causing a bodily feeling for me? What does that bodily feeling mean for my emotions? And then how can I healthily express that? Being deliberately gentle with yourself and with other people, conducting oneself in a way that doesn't prioritize physical confrontation as a means to solve problems. And there's also normalizing platonic physical intimacy, men hugging one another, cuddling, laughing, expressing physical affection, and not allowing homophobia or, again, patriarchal influence dictate the kinds of men that we are. Men's work is not drinking around a fire as the only time you share with someone, watching the game and drinking beers, only spending time together doing an activity like going to the gym. bonding over misogynistic or homophobic jokes, or relying on teasing and humor as your main form of communication. Keeping other men and other people at emotional distance, also not men's work. So this leads me to, what do we do at Hey Brother Co? How do we implement this men's work? Well, we teach men and boys to embody this healthy masculinity, express ourselves, and embrace authenticity, showing up as compassionate, empathetic community leaders. I believe that when I use the term emotional skills, I truly mean it. If you're not taught from a young age how to express yourself, you don't develop some of those skills. And if you're not taught, if you don't go back and try to learn, you'll never have them. And it'll deprive you of the full range of human experience. At Hey Brother Co, we foster close, intimate friendships, and we hope to improve the quality of life for all men and boys, and in turn, everybody who loves men and boys, which I wager is just about every human being. We all know someone who is a man or who is a boy who could use a little more love. My organization is different. There exist other men's work spaces, although it's not quite mainstream and prevalent yet. The reason Hey Brother Co is unique amongst what already exists is because we believe in more than just a masculine or feminine binary. This traditional gender role business has no space in the modern world. Talking about an unapologetic masculinity, which is fierce and allows women to step into their divine, soft femininity, is something that ultimately alienates young men today from feeling like they don't measure up, because there will always be men who don't fit the exact categorization of the socially subjective idea of masculinity. Our programming prioritizes personal care, interpersonal care, building trust, and allowing every man to express whatever his truth is, whether he wants to find himself and toughen up through playing rugby, explore the arts, just be whoever he is. That man belongs at Hey Brother Co. We are here to build community and invest in one another to become the role models that we might have never had. My leadership team is comprised of myself, Johnny Cole, Jericho Cervantes, who's a University of Rochester alumnus, and my dear friend, Lewis Kendall. Among us, we have a variety of other University of Rochester alumni. In fact, from our original retreat cohort, 8 of the 9 men present were University of Rochester alumni. I had men from all over the country get together and fly into Minneapolis, Minnesota. We rented a cabin on the Mississippi River, and we got together for a weekend of healthy masculinity and exploring what it means to be a man in the 21st century. So you might be wondering, what can you do? Whether you're a man or masc identifying person, whether you're an ally, or whether you just know a man. If you are a man or masc identifying person, read, listen, learn, and join a men's work organization. There are plenty of ways to start your journey. I started mine in the academic space, and I followed up on it through finding out about films, podcasts, and books, all of which I will share in a follow-up at the end of this presentation. If you're scared or nervous about what to expect from a men's group, then I encourage you to just give it a shot and step into that discomfort. If you're not a man or masculine identifying person, you should tell those in your life who are to join a men's work organization. There are also a litany of resources on the Hey Brother Co website that I've aggregated for parents and educators. If you want to learn how to parent in a way that promotes healthy masculinity, none of the resources are affiliated with my organization, although I hope to one day, and you can access links to them directly from the website. I believe that by encouraging men to join spaces and to encourage boys to join spaces where we can express our full, authentic selves, we will set a new precedent of what it means to be a man. A precedent that is loving, kind, gentle, and deliberate about our words and actions. And we see far too few role models like this in the modern world. I encourage you to consider attending a Hey Brother Co retreat, a virtual monthly meetup, or a workshop. On the second Tuesday of every month, 7 p.m. Eastern, we host a virtual meetup for men that are interested in Hey Brother Co. and starting their men's work journey. We cycle between a variety of different content. Our first iteration was on the men's mental health and isolation epidemic. We also discuss things like modern dating, sex, gender identity, physical fitness, how to build community, friendships, and more. It's an opportunity to network and make friends. We have breakout rooms so that you can share in a smaller container than a wider group. And again, we equip you with the practical skills on how to flex those emotional muscles. We also have physical in-person retreats, which I know seems surprising in the post-COVID world, but it's one of the most successful things that we can do is come together and build community. An integral part of men's work is that it's done with other men. You can start your journey in the self-development lens. You can start by reading and exploring some of your own tendencies, some of your own patterns, and some of your own life story. But the real work comes in when you allow other men to help support you, and you train yourself to express what's on your heart. So our retreats are sober events. We don't rely on alcohol around a campfire to encourage authentic, vulnerable dialogue. We make sure to prepare all meals communally and cook for one another so that we can exchange in that intimacy and bond over the labor of food. We also have fun. We play spike ball and we kayak and have outdoor activities, physical fitness exercises, yoga, meditation, and we practice the skill of breath work, which I gave you a taste of at the very beginning of this presentation. How can we center ourselves, our minds, and our bodies just through something we have access to within our lungs? Here's a picture from our inaugural cohort playing some spike ball in between sessions, reflecting on what it means to be a man, some guided meditation, and some journal prompts. And it looks like my picture is in the back here, but you can see me poking my head out in a kayak. It was a really wonderful weekend. And since that time, from the original cohort and founding the company, I've led these men in a weekly virtual men's group that has bonded us all and created a lifetime of friendship. I have upcoming opportunities for participation in Hey Brother Co retreats, if this sounds like something that's interesting to you. Over Father's Day weekend, which is from June 16th to the 19th, in Rustburg, Virginia, on a beautiful lakeside farmhouse on an orchard, I'm leading a father-son retreat. This is for adult sons and fathers who are interested in deepening their bond and unpacking some of the generational messaging that we've received on what it means to be a man. During this retreat, I'm going to lead everybody through some of the holistic activities I mentioned and help create actionable next steps for the father-son relationship that many of us have been craving for our entire lives. It's situated on this beautiful property, so there's plenty of room to explore, walk around the lake. And since it is an orchard, the room themes are apple-oriented. So on your Healthy Masculinity retreat, you might have the pleasure of staying in the Pink Lady room or the Granny Smith apple room, which I think is appropriate based on what we're doing to unlearn patriarchy. If a father-son retreat doesn't sound like something that you'd be open to or isn't right for you, I also am leading a larger scale retreat for all adult men over June 30th to July 3rd. And this is going to take place in Myerstown, Pennsylvania at a historic estate, which is pictured here. There's ample room for volleyball and play in addition to some of the communal space that is so essential for us to bond when sharing meals. And if you're interested in reading further about this issue, about men's work, about masculinity, and exploring what it means to be a man, then I've aggregated a list of resources here. Some of these books have changed my life and have become essential texts in Hey Brother Co. I recommend them to anyone who wants to dip their toe in the water of men's work and understand a little bit more how to empathize with and relate to men. Battle Cry and Cry Like a Man by Jason Wilson, For the Love of Men by Liz Plank, Patriarchy Blues by Frederick Joseph, Boys Will Be Human by Justin Baldoni, as well as Man Enough by Justin Baldoni. The Will to Change, which I quoted from earlier in this presentation, is one of the most phenomenal texts by Bell Hooks. And I think this is the best starter book that you could purchase for yourself in order to start this journey, whether you are a man or someone who loves a man. And if you're someone who's a little bit more data oriented, Richard Reeves just released and published a book this year called Of Boys and Men: Why the Modern Male is Struggling, Why It Matters, and What to Do About It. Richard Reeves is a senior economic fellow at the Brookings Institution. So his compelling data-driven approach at analyzing what's going on with men today will help you understand the reality and severity of the challenges we're up against when it comes to understanding what it means to be a man in the modern world. If you're more of a visual learner, I've included links, which I will share in the follow-up, as I mentioned, to a documentary on Ms. Jason Wilson's organization. This documentary was featured on ESPN, and it's called The Cave of Adullam. Jason is a men's work leader who has helped coach hundreds, if not thousands, of boys in Detroit, Michigan, in leadership training, confidence building, anti-bullying, and learning to express themselves. A key part of his curriculum, it's very compelling, emotional to watch in the documentary, is encouraging young boys to cry in front of one another. And it's very beautiful to watch. Also, The Mask You Live In is a phenomenal documentary that has was inspired by Shanti Branch of the Ever Forward Club and the Million Mask Movement. And this is something that we actually used to screen for MOVE when I was a University of Rochester student. We would hold group screenings of this to encourage men to think critically about their masculinity. I also encourage this for parents who are interested in understanding more. The YouTube short MTV film American Male is a wonderful resource. It's about 7 minutes long, and specifically for college-aged men or those who want to understand what it's like to be in college in the 21st century should explore this short film. And I have some TED Talks linked as well. So organizations to support and explore: the Sacred Sons and their subsidiary organization, the Sons Youth, are really wonderful men's work organizations that are hosting events and workshops all over the world. The Cave of Adullam Transformational Training Academy, that's Jason Wilson's organization located in Detroit. And then the Ever Forward Club and the Million Mask Movement, started by Ashanti Branch, which helps create workshops for young people, not just boys, and their teachers as well, to unveil their mask and reveal their authentic selves. And the Kinhood Collective is a smaller men's work organization based on the West Coast for those who don't have access to some of the East Coast Hey Brother Co. offerings. Speaking of Hey Brother Co., that is another organization that I would encourage and appreciate you to support and explore, because I really believe what we're doing is going to change the world for the better. Now, I come to the conclusion of my presentation, and I'd just like to thank you again for your time, attention, and focus on this important topic. It means the world to me that you made space for me to share my story, not just as a University of Rochester student, but as a young man who's still figuring things out and wants other men to be well off, happy, healthy, and fulfilled. Thank you so much. And at this point, I'll open it up for any questions.
Thank you so much. This is Michelle Johnny. So I'm very appreciative of the information you've already shared. We did get a bunch of questions that came in, so we'll see how many we can answer in the next 20 minutes or so. Just to let everybody know, all of those resources, I know that Becky just posted them also in the chat, but we will follow up with not only the video of this presentation, but we'll follow up with all of those links and books and the resources that you already offered, because there were just so many amazing resources and information in that presentation. So thank you. The first question is, when in a situation spending time with a group of men, how do you bring up important men's work discussions without, killing the mood or making people feel uncomfortable?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. First, you might not like this answer, but it's going to require a lot of courage and bravery, because the entire idea that being expressive is killing the mood and sharing yourself with your friends is killing the mood, that's holding you back. So I'd say setting the precedent of vulnerability is one of the most important things I've learned when engaging with other men. It doesn't have to get right to the meat and potatoes of what you're struggling with off the bat. For example, if you're struggling with a breakup, you could say something like, I've really been struggling with my breakup lately, and make space, see what they say, how they engage. Most men are really receptive to this, but they just want someone to, again, set the precedent and let it be known that it's okay to do this. This is a really important part of dismantling patriarchal thought, is actively going against the grain and being an example.
Thank you. Thank you. The next question, does Johnny have any input on toxic masculinity of men, boys of Asian backgrounds? As someone who suffered for most of my life due to a dysfunctional family, this was extremely helpful and appreciative to listen to. So.
Thank you so much for sharing that with me. I prefer the term patriarchal masculinity to toxic masculinity. When I started at MOVE and I started my gender studies coursework, toxic masculinity was the more popular buzzword to describe some of the harmful behaviors of men. But I find that it pigeonholes us and it feels like we're being targeted and it's not quite as descriptive. So instead, I use the term patriarchal masculinity to describe any harmful behaviors or expressions of masculinity that have a negative impact on those around me. So that's the first distinction, is I'd like to normalize the use of patriarchal masculinity versus toxic. And as far as my experience with Asian households or Asian values as it relates to some of these behaviors, I minored in Mandarin Chinese at the university, and I ended up living and studying abroad in China for 7 months in 2018. So I got to witness firsthand some of the nuance behind Chinese culture. And while I'm by no means an expert, I know that there are a set of stoicism and community-oriented values associated with many Asian cultures, which make it explicitly and uniquely difficult for young men and boys to express themselves. I'll include another book, which I actually have on my shelf here, called Betraying Big Brother by Leda Hong Fincher. And it's one of the first texts I read to explore this idea of how masculinity is measured in China. What I would say is I encourage you to seek out therapy and counseling and men's work organizations finding men with similar experience. As I'm not an Asian man, I can't speak to the entirety of that experience, but I hope some of those resources will be helpful, and I'd be happy to commune with you further.
Thank you, Johnny. The next question is, how would this experience be for those who identify as queer? Is this mostly straight men in these retreats?
It's a great question. I love that question so much because, frankly, as a queer man myself, I understand that when people look at an organization like, Hey Brother Co, or they see men's work, they think that it is pretty exclusive to cis straight men. And I'd say that that is definitely a pattern among the men's work industry, especially because a lot of the organizations today do highlight these depictions of, expressing yourself where you let your anger out by punching a pillow, and it's this unapologetic masculinity that you're learning to channel properly. And that means a lot of these groups and organizations are populated mostly by straight cis men. However, I truly believe that patriarchy affects us all. And Hey Brother Co specifically is open to and welcoming to all queer men and masc identifying people, trans men. We all have patriarchal wounds, and we would all benefit from same gender solidarity. So no, it's not exclusive to straight men.
Thank you. Can you speak to how this work fits in with modern male role models like Andrew Tate and Aiden Ross?
Absolutely. Before I answer that question, I'm just going to quickly, I saw something in the chat concerning pronouns. So pronouns are just a way referring to someone as they, them, or she, her, he, him. I understand that pronouns can feel confusing at certain points, but it's very important to allow people to fully express themselves and learn how to refer to people appropriately. And they is still grammatically correct. What you could try doing though is asking your son to name the friend if it's particularly confusing for you, and using their name, Scott, so that you can understand context whenever they bring up that person, but also just be gentle with yourself. If you slip up on using a pronoun, it's not a big deal. You should apologize, move forward, and try again in the future. Thank you for that engagement in the chat. And as far as role models like Andrew Tate and Aiden Ross, this is one of the main dangers facing young men and boys today, is that our social media feeds are inundated with messaging that is more on that traditional, archaic domination model of masculinity. And men such as Andrew Tate, who, if you're not aware, is a man, a sex trafficker, a human trafficker, an abuser, and a man who himself had a really terrible father. And he's gained hundreds of millions of views, clicks, and attention on social media and the internet for his messages around hurting women, how men should be, that you're a loser if you don't have a lot of money or a Lamborghini, nice car. You're a loser if you don't have big muscles. And he really represents this image of, honestly, a boyhood fantasy of what a secret agent or something would be. If you find yourself around young boys or men who are following some of these creators, rather than jumping in to scold or discipline or chastise them and try to purge their feed from this information, I invite you to have a very frank and hard conversation. Ask them why they follow that person. What is it specifically about Andrew Tate that resonates with you? You might be surprised to find that for many young men, it's not specifically the misogynistic element of what he says. It's more on the self-development track. Well, he's telling me that I need to self-respect and work out and go to the gym and get a good job and make a lot of money. And that invites dialogue to say, well, why do you think you need those things in order to be valued as a human being? And you can also start to ask, well, is someone who encourages you to do that, who also says really harmful things about women and other men, is that someone you should be getting that self-respecting message from? Are there other role models that you could look to? So in summary, I'd say for any young boys who are following these people, invite them into a conversation that is free of judgment. It does not try to discipline them for having been exposed to these really prolific figures, and instead is a frank, values-based conversation on what's important to them.
Thank you. This is a comment and then a question at the end. So I'm gonna read it to make sure I get it right. Obviously, this is called men's work, which is fundamentally important because it is necessary for men to lead and guide other men. I often find most of the onus, though, of the issues of our modern world to be solely placed on the backs of men as opposed to women. Both genders have built this current world, and I have come to a deep understanding of how influential women are on men. Would you agree with the statement, women finding and stepping into their care / femininity can assist in influencing men to rediscover their care?
Can women stepping into their care and femininity assist men in stepping into and discovering their own care? I think I paraphrased a little bit.
Yeah, assist in influencing men to rediscover their care.
I would absolutely agree with that statement, because some of the most influential people in my own life who have helped me become a more emotionally available and intelligent person, and have in fact saved me from continuously numbing myself, have been some amazing women, such as my sister and my mom, and so many of my female friends, some of whom are on this call as well. So I would say that women can help, and healing occurs in community, and we all have a responsibility collectively to care for those in our community. However, it is most important for us men to develop these skills and not put the burden on women to continuously provide this emotional labor. And words like emotional labor and domestic labor refer to the actual time, energy, and thought that go into thinking and feeling on behalf of someone or operating and running a household. And from an economic perspective, women have been exploited historically for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years for their emotional and domestic labor, and it's been undervalued drastically. So I would urge everyone to ask themselves, what is it that the women in my life are already doing for me? And what areas can I contribute and show up on an emotional plane? Maybe where could I find support from other men or create that as well? So I think we all have our part to play, and I would be nowhere without the women in my life. But I think it's so important to get together as communities of men and practice this specifically with other men and not rely only on women to be our therapists, our girlfriends, our wives, our mothers, all in one.
Thank you. Okay, we have 9 minutes. We're still doing well. Are there groups organized specifically by age group? For men's and boys' work? I mean,
yeah, that's a great question. So currently at Hey Brother Co., the retreats I have planned this year are slated for adults, age 17 and up. However, next year I will be offering boyhood programming. The other organizations that I shared, specifically the Sacred Sons, they are established to the point of having an international organization called the Sons Youth, where they do provide specific boyhood programming that is categorized into kind of grade level and age level. So high school boys are together versus middle school and primary school aged boys. And so I encourage you to explore that organization, but also be on the lookout for Hey Brother Co.'s future offerings and what you can do in the meantime before being able to have your son or a young boy in your life attend, is to do some reading yourself on how to start practicing healthy masculinity or impressing those values into your son's life.
thank you. There's also one that came in. I volunteer with the Boy Scouts. They have provided value, but they have baggage. I see efforts to modernize, and I see the old guard that inhibit progress. I don't want to abandon the organization, but I'm challenged. So what do you think about continuing in an organization of that type?
I think that Professor Scott Galloway of NYU's Stern Business School is a really prolific voice right now on how there are so few adult men investing in young boys today and investing in young men. So what you're doing by volunteering with the Boy Scouts of America is wonderful. And I really appreciate the fact that you're taking your time to be there for young boys. I agree that that organization does have some baggage and a certain track record. So if you feel so called, I would encourage you to try and facilitate conversation with some of the leadership of your local Boy Scouts organization. Maybe present them with some of the concepts we've discussed today, whether it's reading or watching a film together. Maybe you could organize a Boy Scouts of America night where you watch The Mask You Live In, which is a wonderful documentary film you can rent for maybe $5. And I think that would inspire some incredible conversation and could be a good thing for all of the Boy Scouts and their dads to do together as well. If you feel limited and like the old guard just simply won't change, then there are plenty of other areas such as the Boys and Girls Club or the Big Brother program, where I know they're looking for adult men to help guide and mentor young boys. So there are probably other organizations that you can invest your time into as well.
Sorry, I couldn't find the unmute button for a second.
Thank you.
There are a couple of other questions that I'm going to see. We're 5 minutes. There are a couple of other ones that came in. Some other people are asking about advice for parents, but there's also another one that came, and I think that you're doing that throughout with the books and the other recommendations you have through your resources, which we will be sharing out again. There is another question that came in. Do you have a favorite passage from Bell Hooks that connects with either your personal or experience or to Hey Brother Co?
Absolutely. And I really appreciate you asking that question. I'm going to pull it up so that I can quote it specifically. And as far as resources for parents, some of the books that are on, The Will to Change is a phenomenal one for you to read as a parent. And then some of the books that are listed on my website. For example, How to Raise a Feminist Son by Sonia Jha is a really wonderful text. And if I look here, where is my recent? Well, I'll paraphrase the passage in that case. And the passage is that the first act of violence that the patriarchy demands of men is not violence against women or others, but it's violence against ourselves. The act of emotional self-mutilation, which creates emotional cripples. Paraphrasing, but that's my favorite quote because I resonate deeply. The distance that I had in so many of my relationships, specifically with my mom and my sister, through the first 23 years of my life, was in large part because I felt that I had been mutilating myself and my emotions and bottling everything up. And I think that is what we're teaching our young boys to do as soon as they're born. I know that there's some parents and people out there which even subconsciously don't believe in holding and cuddling their infant sons as much because they don't want to make them soft versus infant girls who were encouraged to cuddle and make physical contact with. So I'd say that's the quote that resonates most. Thank you for that question.
Yeah, that was a great question. We have about 3 minutes left. Do you have, do some of the resources and some of the programs that are available, do they help people talk about men's work or talk about just, do they help men talk about these things or with their parents? It's like, say, for example, without they give people tools so that it doesn't become like a blame situation, that people don't feel like they're pointing, that they'll shut down because they're being blamed for something. Is this part of the men's work, is giving tools towards these conversations with other people?
Absolutely. I have a leadership training retreat coming up in May for myself and my leadership team to train on exactly this. How do we promote this conversation? And what are some of the tools and templates and rubrics we can use? So I love this question. And at the moment, I don't have set programming. However, this sounds like a great topic that we could dive into in one of our monthly meetups, the next of which is happening next Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern, and you can register on my site. I am confident I can spend a full 3 hours talking about how do you tell other folks about men's work without any blame and shame mechanism. And that's something we'll be covering on the Father-Son retreat as well.
That sounds great. A lot of people who are doing work on themselves, or they're diving into issues, to patterns. I think one of the hardest things to do is to integrate what you're learning about yourself or your experience into your life. And then also it changes how you show up. And so there's an effect that it has on other people around you. So that's why that question is, I think, sort of important to learn about how do you integrate your learning in your bigger world.
Integration, I misunderstood the question at first, I guess, but integration is a huge part of our retreats. This is not about getting together with men and then only when you're on a retreat or in a certain group with men, that's when you find it acceptable to express yourself. It's equipping you with the skills at those events so you can bring it into your life. And that is a fundamental part of the curriculum.
That sounds fantastic. Well, I think we're right on time. So I'm not going to ask any more questions. There were only a couple more, so I will share them with Johnny and he can answer directly with you. And we just wanted to thank you for this presentation. It was really eye-opening. I hope everybody enjoyed it. I know it will be viewed many times in our video library. Lunchtime doesn't always work for people, and I know West Coast and around the world also. So we will be sharing this video out widely, and we look forward to sharing your resources, and we look forward to hearing more about what you're doing with your new organization.
Thank you. Please sign up for a retreat and send the info to your friends or anyone who might be interested.
Thank you so much, Johnny. Really appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Lots of love in the chat box. You can see everybody's thanking you. So I think it was really wonderful.
I appreciate everyone's attendance and attention. It really means the world to me. I'm seeing all of the names that I recognize, and it's making me feel kind of emotional for all the people who came to support. So thank you, truly.
Thank you.
Thank you.